Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, our dear parents and teachers. Welcome to our Parent Teachers Summit on how to teach children about sexual purity and holiness using what every child must know teacher's guide. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're grateful to have you here with us. So this is a webinar that is a video manual on how to use what every child must know teacher's guide to teach children about sexual purity and holiness using what every child must know book, of course. So thank you so much for joining us. In 2019, more than Ruby started to teach children about sexual purity and holiness, having physical meetings, and we had physical meetings in 2019. Then in 2020, COVID hit, and we had to start to have online classes. So when we started our online classes, we were having online classes, was it weekly or monthly? We're having online classes, and then we had children participating with their parents' phone. So we were teaching children about sexual purity using their parents, through their parents' phone, and with their parents' supervision. And that was so delightful for us because we had the support of the parents. We had the parents helping us to prepare the children for their assignments and for their presentations, and it was really interesting and encouraging. So I want to take a break now and take this moment to appreciate our parents that were with us when we started in 2019, and those that joined us in 2020 when we were having the online classes. To be very honest, the support was overwhelming. It was nothing short of a miracle. I'm telling you, it was nothing short of a miracle the way you were supportive of us. And I just want to take this moment to pray for you that your labor will not be in vain in the name of Jesus. You will reap a bountiful harvest for your labor in Jesus' name. Thank you so much for your love and your support. God bless you. Amen. Okay, moving on. In 2020, like I was saying, we had our online classes, and in 2020 we co-authored a book. That's the What Every Child Must Know book, which is a practical guide to preventing child sexual abuse. It's a book for children between the ages of 4 to 10. So in 2021, based on demand, we authored a new collection of books, which is the Teacher's Guide and two workbooks. The first workbook for children between ages 4 to 5, and the second workbook for children between the ages of 6 to 10. So this video manual, this Parent Teacher Summit, is where we're going to talk about how to use the Teacher's Guide to teach the children. The Teacher's Guide is a breakdown on how parents and teachers can teach their children, yes, their children, using the What Every Child Must Know book. So we have the audio book, the e-book, and the hard copy book, which will be made available for every parent and teacher that signed up for this Parent Teacher Summit. That is our special gift to you for joining us. So it's going to be made available for us as gifts for free. So thank you so much, and that is our thank you to you. God bless you. The Teacher's Guide is a breakdown on how to use the book to teach children about sexual purity. It's a whole 10-month curriculum that we're going to be running through with you. So this video manual is to explain to you as a parent and a teacher how to use the book. And then the workbook itself is what the children are going to use to drive home their lessons. So we don't want them to only read the book and say that, okay, I understand. We want to test their knowledge and ensure that they are able to speak about sexual purity and also able to stand for sexual purity, because it's now part of them, you understand. So we are testing their knowledge to see what they know. Sharing my screen, and this is the Teacher's Guide, and I will just do a not very brief I'm just going to run through the book and explain in details to us what we need to know about how to use the book and how to go about it, just to make it easier to use. So first, What Every Child Must Know is a practical guide to enlighten children to recognize as well as prevent sexual abuse. So that's what the book is about. The Teacher's Guide assists teachers, parents, guardians to teach effectively. I'm hoping that we don't have only parents on this call or teachers on this call. I know that we have other younger teachers, like people that they teach children to, not just parents or teachers in school. So that's why we have guardians also. So the Teacher's Guide assists guardians to teach effectively and help the children understand how to apply the wisdom gained from the book. So it's a breakdown of how to apply the book. The Teacher's Guide is a breakdown that helps parents to, explain to their children, parents, teachers, and guardians. So we have the workbook, like I mentioned earlier, we have the workbook for children between ages 4 to 5. And the workbook for the children between the ages of 4 to 5 is filled with answers to the questions because they are younger children. And so we know that they may not be able to write so much. So we have the answers in the workbook. We have shapes in the workbook. We have illustrations in the workbook for the children. So the children are to tick the answers in their workbook based on what they have learned in their textbook. So we also have, the children are allowed to tick all the answers. These teachers note, the children are allowed to tick all the answers in their workbook because all the answers are actually correct. The answers are taken from the book itself. And so they're actually allowed to tick all the answers. And it's just a way of trying to ensure that we know that they actually really understand this thing. And so it's really pretty much the same thing that they have in their textbook that is in their workbook, but we are testing their knowledge and we want to know if they remember what they read, right? Or if they remember what they were taught by their teachers. So that is the reason we have all the answers in their workbook and to make it easier for them because they are children between ages 4 to 5. We don't want to stress them. Okay, so we have the workbook for children between the ages of 6 to 10 also. And they don't have the answers. They don't have the answers because they are older and we expect that they should be able to write well, and writing wouldn't be an issue for them. We wouldn't stress them out. So the answers to the workbook for the children between the ages of 6 to 10 has questions to be answered in writing by the children and comments are to be made by the teacher. So now let me sit on this comment part because we intentionally put that box there in the workbook for the children to enable the teachers validate the children. Please, we want you to encourage them because for them, some of them going through a serious teaching or a serious learning period on sexual purity like this is new to them. So we want you to encourage them, want you to validate them. When they answer their questions, we want you to let them know that they are amazing, they are sweet, they are doing well, and just encourage them so that they do better and they are more interested. And next time they want to answer their questions because they're going to continue like that till the end of lesson. So please encourage them, validate them, love upon them in the comments box. Thank you. Love and light, Adejoke Agorom. Moving on to the mode of learning. At number 1, we have reading, recitation of affirmation, and definition. So in the book itself, we have affirmations, then we have definitions. So we want the teachers to read out the definitions to the children. Just read it out loud to them and let them echo it after you. Let them recite accordingly. Then we have the workbook exercise. In the workbook, the teachers are to instruct the children to take learning exercise in their workbook. At the end of this webinar, we're going to have questions and we're going to have a question and answer session. So if you have any question, please note them and then we'll take the questions at the end of the session. Thank you so much. And number 2 on our mode of learning, we have the workbook exercise. Teachers are to instruct the children to take their learning exercise in their workbook and please monitor them closely to ensure that they actually take the assessment because we don't want them to just listen in class or read the book and not be able to internalize the learning. The workbook is actually to help them to, just remember this and it makes it easier for them to retain the knowledge. That's why the workbook is there. That's why the assessment is there. So please help us monitor them closely to ensure that they actually take their assessment. And then in the workbook at number 2B, we have score the children by making comments using the comment box in the workbook. This comment box, I already mentioned earlier, but please, parents, teachers, affirm them, validate them, love up on them in the comment box, and just encourage them so that they can do better. Thank you. And number 3, on the mode of learning, we have comments, questions, role play. So we would love the teachers and parents to ask the children questions. In the middle of the teaching, you can just ask them questions. Ask them, okay, what is this? What is sexual abuse? What is a sexual contact? And also take questions from them, because we would love to also have feedback from them. You know, when you begin to teach them some of these topics, some of them are already curious. They already have a lot of questions. Many times children ask a lot of questions. So take their questions and ask them to ask you questions. So ask them questions and ask them to ask you questions. So let there be that period where you're saying that, okay, this is our question time, and I'm going to ask you a question, and you can also ask me questions, so that they are aware that it's a very free environment where they are free to speak their mind. Do you understand? Thank you so much. And then we have the role play. At number 3B on the mode of learning, we have the role play. So the purpose of the role play is to help the children to further understand the attitude required in responding to situations of sexual abuse. So because they are children, we don't want them to be responding and saying no when they should say no, frankly. We want them to be firm in their response. And so that is why we are having the role play. When we want them to scream, we want them to scream out loud. So we have our scenarios already, which we are going to go into shortly. But the purpose of the role play is to help the children understand the attitude required. So we would love teachers to pay attention to how they respond, how they react, how they act. And you know, we have role plays, we have about 5 to 6 scenarios. So if possible, if you're teaching in a class, you can have like almost all the children practice it, so that you can really see if they are getting this attitude, the right attitude, yes, that's the word, the right attitude that is required to respond in a situation where somebody is trying to molest them, or even when they are seeing a situation where another person is molesting a child. Moving on, the duration for this course is, I'm calling it a course, for this learning exercise is 10 months. 10 months. We have 10 lessons for 10 months. At lesson 1, we have who is a child. The book talks about it extensively. And lesson 1A says reading and recitation of information and definition. Lesson 1B, workbook exercise. Lesson 1C, comments, questions, and role play. So this curriculum breaks down what is expected of a teacher or a parent or a guardian that wants to teach children about sexual purity using what every child knows notebook. So it gives you a breakdown, and you just know that, okay, so this is what I'm supposed to do just for lesson 1. It's not so much work as such. So this breakdown will help you know what to expect for each lesson, and you know, to prepare well for the class. At lesson 2, we have what is child sexual abuse. 2A, reading and recitation of definitions. 2B, workbook exercise. 2C, comments, questions, and role play. So we see that the comments are in all of the lessons, because we are very keen about that. We believe that when the children are validated and encouraged, they'll do better. At lesson 3, we have what is a sexual contact. Then moving on to lesson 4, what can be used to make a sexual contact. Lesson 5, who is an abuser. All of these topics have been addressed in the book itself. That's what every child must know, book. And lesson 6, what are red flags? And lesson 7, examples of red flags. At lesson 8 is self-defense. Lesson 9, we have other techniques for self-defense. Lesson 10, we have stories. So we have 2 different stories that teaches about sexual purity, that test the brain of the children. So at the end of each story, we have questions for the children to answer. So that is what we're doing at lesson 10. You can actually have this lesson in 2 different classes because we have 2 stories and we will want them to, really get the best of each story. So if you have the time, you can actually have lesson 10 in 2 classes for the children. So lesson 10, we have 10A, reading and recitation of definition. Lesson 10B. 10B says children are to answer questions in the textbook. Like I mentioned earlier, we have questions from the story for the children to answer. And because it's a story, I believe that they would also have questions. And then we have comments, questions, and role play. Next on our teacher's guide is questions and role play. So I mentioned this earlier that we have the role play, and the purpose of the role play is to ensure that the children know the right attitude when they find themselves in a situation where somebody is abusing a child. So it could just be in a school, anywhere, and it may not even be them. It may be something that they see, but they can speak against it. They can say that, okay, this thing is wrong, and they know the right thing to do. So we want them to have the right attitude, and that is why this role play is there. So it is very important. It's very important that they maintain the right attitude in responding to a situation of sexual abuse. Any of these questions could be asked based on how much the children have learned through the study. So these questions are not based on lessons per se, and we expect that the teachers will just pick any of the questions and just ask them that based on what you've learned today, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I'm going to run through the questions now. As the children answer these questions, kindly look out for their body language and encourage firmness in response. Yes, please. We want them to be firm in their response, in the way they respond, even if the child is not a child that speaks firmly, or a child that we want them to be assertive when it comes to this. Even if the child is a very reserved child, we still want them to be very assertive when it comes to responding to situations like this. And that is why we have the role play, so that they can practice it. Number 1, if someone calls you my husband or my wife, what would be your reaction? So the teacher is to watch out for their reaction. If someone calls you my wife or my husband, what would be your reaction? And we would also love the teachers, parents, guardians to, read the question out in a way, or even act it out for them, and just say that, oh, my husband, how are you? The way we hear it, I'm sure that a lot of us have heard it around, where some adults are calling children my husband, calling them my wife, and all of those things. We know that this calling them my husband or my wife when they are not married to you, it makes them, it sends a lot of message to them, and makes them, begin to think that, oh, my husband, my wife, and they could possibly begin to think that, oh, you're my husband. And because of that, they can actually feel that, oh, some things are permissible because this person calls me my husband, or this person calls me my wife, and mommy said nothing about it, or maybe nobody said it was wrong. So that is why we don't want that. We don't encourage it at all. And so we want the teachers, our parents and guardians, using the teacher's guide to ask them in a way that is almost like it reminds them, if they've ever been in that situation where they were called my husband or my wife by an adult or whoever it is, they can now go back to the person and say that I'm not your husband, I'm not your wife, in a way that makes the person know that, oh, is this a child speaking? Please. Okay. So number 2, we have, if someone tries to touch your private parts and says you are a big boy or you are a big girl, don't tell your parents. What would be your reaction? So after the question, after reading out the question, you may not even read out the question to them. Since you have read the question personally as a teacher, a parent, or a guardian, you can actually act it out to them and say, oh, try it, like try to touch their private part and say that. For a parent, try to touch their private part and say, oh, you're a big boy, you're a big girl. Don't tell your parents, and expect to see what their reaction would be to that. And also let them know what their reaction should be. Nobody should tell them that. Nobody should do that to them. Whenever they see such thing, they should speak against it. They have all of the proper responses to a situation like this in, I think it's lesson 8, which is on self-defense, So this question will come in handy when they take their lesson on self-defense. Then at number 3, someone tries to touch your private part and you say you would report to your parents, and he or she says you are not a baby anymore and tries to touch you again, what would be your reaction? For this question, if you are teaching a class as a teacher, you can actually ask them all and weigh their answers and guide them properly as well. I'm still a child. Let the children answer. I'm still a child. Please don't touch me. I'm going to report you to my parents. What you're doing is wrong. It is evil and against the will of God. They have all of those answers in their workbook. They have it also in their book. And so these questions are to test their knowledge. Moving on to question 4, it says, if someone gives you sweet, biscuit, chocolates, ice cream, and says you should not tell your parents, what would be your reaction? So also test their knowledge and let them know that they shouldn't take gifts, whatever it is, without sharing with their parents. They shouldn't even take things from strangers. Not just strangers, even family members, without showing to their parents, so that they don't get used to taking things from people. And then, because many times, abusers are people that are known to the family. So let them be careful with taking gifts from people. Moving on to number 5, if someone touches your private parts, would you report? That's one question. Would you report? Who would you report to? Why would you report to that person? In our book, in the book, that's what every child must know. We have answers to this question. If someone touches your private part, you should report. You should report to your parents. You should report to your teacher. You should report them. So don't keep secrets from your parents. I'm talking about the answers the children should give to this question now. And as a teacher, as a parent, you can also guide them, also make them know that they can trust you, that they can always speak to you, that you are available for them, and you're teaching them this because you want them to be protected, and that, just encourage them to open up. And you could also even ask them, has someone touched the private parts before? Because many a times, if we don't ask them these questions, they may not speak about it. Some children may not speak about it. So you can actually go ahead and ask them personally these questions. Beyond asking them if somebody does it, you can ask them personally, has someone done this to you before? Has someone attempted this with you before? And just create that atmosphere, that relationship where they can always confide in you and they can share with you, right? Then the next question says, who would you report to? Why would you report to that person? So in the book, we teach them to report to their parents, we teach them to report to their parents, to report to their teachers. And so we also want them to confide in their parents and trust their parents, and more than they would trust just any other person, right? So we encourage them to report to their parents, to report to their teachers, and also ask them why they would report to that person.
so that as a parent, you can encourage them personally to report to you if anybody tries to touch them inappropriately. As a teacher, you can encourage them to report to you in school and make them see that yes, you're really interested in their well-being and you really care about them, and that is why you want them to report so that you can protect them. Thank you. Moving on, and number 6, if someone says, I will kill you or I will kill your parents if you report, what would your reaction be? What would your reaction be? So this is a question that is likely to make them afraid, but we want our teachers, parents, and guardians to let them understand that still, no matter how bad it is, the person is threatening to kill them. It's an offense under the law, and it's an offense under the law to threaten their life. But more importantly, they should still report to their parents because the parents will protect them, because the teacher will protect them. So still encourage them to report. First of all, their reaction in such situation, they should just let the person know. They're not to argue with the person and say that, oh, no, you cannot kill me, you cannot do anything to me, or anything like that. They can't be quiet, but the most important thing is that they should not keep it to themselves. They should not keep it as a secret. They should report to their parents, because many times it's just an empty threat. It's just something that they're saying so that they would not be exposed. So encourage the children to say the truth and speak out, so that such a person would not carry out, because many times what they want to do is to just molest the child. The person will not molest the child or even do it to other children. Moving on, the workbook answers. Yes, in the teacher's guide, we have the workbook answers, the answers to the questions in the workbook. So, like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the workbook, we mentioned that we have the workbook for children between ages 4 to 5 and for children between ages 6 to 10. So the workbook answers are contained in the teacher's guide. So we don't want our teachers stressing and think, oh, is this the correct answer? Is this not? So all of the answers to the questions in the workbook are in the teacher's guide. So you can always look at it and, mark and score the children based on the answers in the workbook. Every lesson has the answers to the questions in the workbook in the teacher's guide. And we would want our teachers and our parents and guardians, whoever is using this book, the teacher's guide, to teach the children following these answers in the workbook. We have answers in the workbook: lesson 6, lesson 7, lesson 8, lesson 9, and self-defense. Then we also have the answers to the stories that we mentioned earlier. Yeah, so that is all on the teacher's guide. That's all on the teacher's guide. Now we're going to move on to taking questions from you. If you have any question, please let us know in the comment box, or you could just signify and then we'll take your question. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so very much. It's been such a delight sharing with you